Welcome to Sleep Time, where I read short stories that hopefully calm your mind a little bit. Before I begin, a quick disclaimer: this book does contain graphic descriptions of what it feels like to be afraid and uncomfortable. Chapter 8: A Blood Red Nightmare. I was 6 when Mom took me to see a child psychologist. I don't think she really wanted me to see one, partly because she knew it would terrify me, and partly because it meant admitting to herself that my problem was mental rather than physical, which she still didn't want to accept. But deep down, she knew it was true, and she knew she had to do something about it. So she asked the doctor to recommend someone, and he'd asked around and come back with a name, and Mom got in touch with her and made an appointment. We got as far as the waiting room when the psychologist, or therapist, or whatever she called herself, came out of her consulting room and called me and Mom in. I simply couldn't move. The sheer sight of her terrified me so much that I went into some kind of shock. Paralyzed in my chair, my muscles locked up, my eyes bulging, my throat too tight to breathe. The psychologist lady also froze for a moment, and I could tell by the look on her face that she was a bit startled by my petrified reaction to her. But, to her credit, she composed herself pretty quickly, forcing a friendly smile to her face. She came over to where I was sitting with Mom and stopped in front of us. I didn't want to look at her, but I just couldn't help it. She was fairly old, but not ancient or anything. She had longish white hair tied back in a braid, and she was wearing a big necklace made out of shiny gold disc. She had a pea-sized mole or something on her upper lip, a hard-looking brown lump. And as I sat there, staring helplessly at it, I suddenly began to imagine it pulsing and throbbing, turning red, and then I saw it splitting open, a big fat yellow fly crawling out. "Hello, Elliot," the psychologist lady started to say. "My name's..." I didn't hear the rest of it. I was already running for the door screaming as my heart went out. About 6 months after that, Mom and the doc arranged for another psychologist to visit me at home, but that didn't work out either. The night before the day of the visit, I got myself into such a state just thinking about it that I ended up being physically ill. Vomiting, diarrhea, cold sweats, a burning fever. The home visit was canceled. "How about if I talk to him?" the doc said to Mom. "I could ask him how he feels about everything, why he's so frightened of things, and I could record our conversation, then pass it on to a child psychologist to see what they think." "Would they be willing to do that?" asked Mom. "There's no harm in asking, is there?" "Doc, how are you actually feeling when you're frightened of something, Elliot?" "Me? I feel scared." "Do you know why?" "What do you mean?" "What I'm trying to get at is why you get so frightened. What is it that makes you so afraid?" "It depends." "On what?" "Different things scare me in different ways." "Can you give me an example?" "Like what?" "Cars, for instance. You're frightened of cars, aren't you?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Because they can kill me." "Could you expand on that a bit?" "When I'm in a car, all I can think about is what happens if something goes wrong with it and it swerves off the road, or if something goes wrong with the driver and they lose control and drive into a wall, or if something goes wrong with another car or its driver and that car loses control and smashes into us. That's why I'm frightened of cars. Because you think they can kill you. Because they can kill me. So it's a fear based on possible future reality." "I don't know what that means." "It means you're frightened of something that could happen. It's highly unlikely it will happen, but there's always a possibility." "Right. What about when you're scared of things that don't pose an obvious threat? Like colors. What is it about the color red that scares you, for example? Is it the actual color itself?" "Not really, no." "What is it then? Does the color red remind you of something scary?" "Blood." "Blood?" "Yeah. Red reminds you of blood." "Yeah." "And that scares you?" "Yeah." "Why?" don't know. It just does. When I see something red, the redness of it just fills my head with blood. Is that why you ran away from that Santa Claus when you were little? It happened 8 years ago, when I was 5 years old. I was in town with Mom, clinging onto her hand as we made our way through the crowds of festive shoppers. It was so noisy and chaotic that I was already scared out of my wits, but that was nothing compared to the utter horror I felt when a hunchback Santa Claus suddenly appeared right in front of me. I don't know where he came from. He was probably part of some Christmas carnival or something, and I don't know what on earth he thought he was doing either. All I know is that he loomed toward me out of the crowd, stooped over so his head was level with mine, and with his arms stretched out towards me. I was so shocked and horrified that I actually wet myself. He was hideous, his face all scabby and broken-veined, his eyes unfocused, his teeth just a row of rotten black stubs. His dirty old Santa beard was yellowed with nicotine stains and dotted with cigarette burns and ketchup drips, and God knows what else. And underneath that beard, clearly visible, was a thick growth of bristly black stubble. Although he had all the Santa gear on, red hat, red jacket, red pants, he didn't look anything like he was supposed to. He wasn't very old for a start, mid-20s at most, and he wasn't fat and jolly either. He was just horrible, a blood-red nightmare, and he smelled bad too, like rotten fruit mixed with cigarette smoke. It must have been obvious how terrified I was, but as I cowered away from him, desperately hiding behind Mom's legs, he just grinned and kept coming after me as if I was some kind of game. "Don't be scared, kid," his voice, all wheezy and croaky. "It's only Santa. Hey, come on, I ain't gonna hurt ya." This all happened so quickly that I don't think Mom knew what was going on at first, but when this monstrous Santa reached around her legs, pawing at me in what he must have thought was a playful fashion, I tore my hand away from hers and ran off into the crowd. She suddenly sprang into action. When the devil Santa stood up straight, swore under his breath, and started to come after me, she lashed out at him, kicking him hard in the groin as he doubled over in agony and sank to the ground. She ran after me, calling out my name as she went. I would have been scared of him, whatever color clothes he was wearing. "Doc, do you think you would have been less scared if he wasn't dressed all in red?" "Yeah, but I still would have run away from him." "What about all the red things you see every day? I mean, that Homer Simpson mug on your desk over there, the one with all your pens in it, that's got bits of red on it." "I'm okay with bits of red. It's only when there's a big solid lump of it that it really gets to me. Like if someone's wearing a red coat or something, and it doesn't happen all the time either." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes I can see the scary colors and they don't do anything to me at all, and other times they only bother me a bit. But on scary color days, that's when it's really bad." "What other colors are scary?" "Black, blue, purple sometimes." "Do they fill your head with frightening things the same way that red does?" "Yeah." "What does blackness fill your head with?" "Death, darkness, night, nothingness." "Blue?" "The sea, lakes, and rivers." "What is it about the sea that scares you?" "Drowning." "Do you have scary days and non-scary days with these colors too?" "Yeah. Different days for different colors." "No. A scary colored day is the same for all colors, and so is a non-scary day." "What kind of day is today?" "Not too bad. Not completely non-scary, but not totally scary either. Somewhere in between." "And what about all this, Elliot? All your books, the television, your laptop. What about it?" "Well, a few minutes ago you were telling me about your fear of cars, but if the television was on now, you'd almost certainly come across a car on one of the channels. It might be a film, an advert, a documentary. Cars are everywhere on television, so how can you watch it? It's not real. A car on the television isn't a ton of speedy metal. It's just a digital image made up of millions of pixels. Pixels can't kill you. Doesn't it remind you of cars, though? Like red reminds you of blood. No. Why not? I don't know. That's just how it is. I don't have any control over what scares me and what doesn't. Does anything on television frighten you? No. Not even horrific things on the news. It's not real. It's a representation of reality, though, isn't it? It's still not real. And that's the same with all your books and the things you see on the internet, is it? It's not real, so it's not frightening. I can't explain it. I don't even bother trying to understand it myself anymore. I don't know. I just do my best to live with it. Do you ever get used to being scared all the time? No, but I've kind of become used to not getting used to it. Chapter 9, At Least a Million. Are you sure we can trust her? Dak asked Jenner. They'd left the moors behind now and were driving along a narrow road that would eventually bring them out at the top of the village. The snow had eased off a little, and although the icy wind was still blowing hard, the Land Rover was shielded from the worst of it by the high banks and dry stone walls on either side of the road. I don't trust anyone, Jenner said matter-of-factly. So how do you know she's not lying? Because she knows what I'll do to her if she is. Dak didn't doubt there was a veiled threat to him in Jenner's answer. And you'd better not mess around with me either. And he also knew that Jenner didn't make idle threats. He made promises, and he kept them. It just seems a bit odd, that's all, Dak said. What do you mean? The timing, you know? Christmas and everything? I still don't get it. I mean, you would have thought they'd emptied the place over Christmas, not keep it all there. Jenner sighed. How many more times do I have to tell you? The whole point of this, the reason it won't be expected, and why we're going to get away with it is precisely because of the timing. They usually would keep all the branches empty over Christmas, but when their internal computer system crashed last week, it messed up the program they used to schedule and track the collections. Jenner paused, glancing sideways at Dak. Do I really have to go over this all over again? Don't you remember anything, for God's sake? Yeah, of course I remember, Dick said defensively. It's just, well, I can't be expected to remember everything, can I? Jenner shook his head in disbelief. He'd always known that Dak wasn't particularly intelligent. He could barely read or write, for a start. But Jenner was beginning to wonder now if there was something seriously wrong with him. How could he not remember what he'd already been told at least 3 or 4 times? Jenner slowed the Land Rover and pulled over to let a tractor go by. Once it had passed, he lit a cigarette and turned to Dak. The money's there, okay? He said, as patiently as possible. It's in the vault. That's all you need to know. How much? I've already told you that. I know. Dak grinned. I just want to hear it again. At least $1 million, according to the girl. Probably more. At least $1 million, Dak echoed dreamily. Yeah, and the best thing about it is they won't even know it's gone until the day after Boxing Day. He'll know, though, won't he? Who? The manager guy. You know, the one who's going to open the safe for us. He'll know the money's gone. He won't tell anyone. Why not? Because he'll know what I'll do to his mother if he does. Chapter 10. A Dead Black Line. Me. You think I'm crazy? Doc. Do you? I don't know. Sometimes, maybe. I'm definitely not normal, am I? None of us are normal. We all have things wrong with us. It's just that some of those things have a much bigger effect on our lives than others. Do you think something could have gone wrong in my head when I was a baby? Do you mean when your heart stopped? Yeah, maybe my brain stopped too. Or it got damaged or something? Well, that can happen, yes. If you're starved of oxygen at birth, it can lead to irreversible brain damage. But in all the instances I've ever come across, the oxygen supply has been stopped for at least 2 or 3 minutes, usually quite a bit longer. But that wasn't the case with you, Elliot. Your heart stopped beating for less than a minute. Yeah, but what if there's absolutely nothing wrong with your mind, Elliot? Trust me. If you'd suffer any brain damage, I'd know. So you're saying it's perfectly alright for me to be terrified of everything? No, of course not. So there is something wrong with my brain. Sometimes I have no sense of the present. All I can feel is a sense of the past and a sense of the future. The then and the when. I can look back and remember things that happened, things that I did, and I can look forward to things that haven't happened yet. I can imagine things happening in the future. The next half hour, the next day, next Monday afternoon, next year. I can do all that. But the present seems to pass me by. I can't get a hold of it. It's like a shapeless and senseless void that moves like a cursor between the past and the future. A dead black line, forever moving, forever being, but never actually there. Me. I know you think I'm weird, Doc. What makes you say that? I heard you talking with Mom once. You told her it was really weird how sometimes I sound really grown up, almost like an adult, but other times I almost seem babyish. I didn't say it was really weird. I just said I'd noticed it, that's all. And I didn't say babyish either. All I said was that sometimes the way you talk makes you sound older than you are, and sometimes you come across as being younger than you are. I didn't say it was weird, and I wouldn't use that word anyway. What word would you use? I don't know. Different, perhaps. Unusual? There's nothing wrong with being unusual. I've never met my father. According to my mom, she met him at a party. They spent the night together and that was it. They never saw each other again. It was all perfectly amicable, she told me once. He was a lovely man and we had a very nice time together, but neither of us wanted to take it any further, and we were both quite happy to go our separate ways. What was his name? I asked her. Martin. Martin what? I honestly don't know. He introduced himself as Martin, and I told him I was Grace, and that's all we needed to know. Even if she hadn't known his last name, she still wouldn't have made an effort to contact him when she found out she was pregnant. It would only have complicated things, she explained, and besides, apart from his name, the only other thing I knew about Martin was that he lived in Los Angeles and he was a writer. But he didn't write under his real name, so I couldn't have tracked him down even if I wanted to, which I didn't. I don't miss having a father. You can't miss what you've never had, can you? And so on the rare occasion when I do wonder what it would be like to have a dad, the mere thought of it makes me shudder. A man living in my house. A man I had to tear Mom with? No, I wouldn't like that one bit. Doc, we might not know the precise cause of your problem, Elliot, but we know how it affects you, and it might be possible to lessen those effects to some degree. Me. How? There are anti-anxiety medications that might help. They're obviously not intended for treating the level of fear that afflicts you, and normally I'd never even consider these types of medications for a child, but you're far from a normal case, Elliot. Thanks a lot. The doc looks totally different when he smiles, which isn't very often, but when he does smile, it lightens his face, makes him look younger, lifts his mask of somber gravity and reveals a twinkle of the child in him. Duck. Anyway, I've talked to your mom about it, and although she hates the idea of putting you on medication as much as I do, she agrees that it's worth trying, but only if you want to. Will the drugs stop me being afraid? No, but they might lessen the fear of the severity of your fears. So I'll still be scared of things, but not so much. Possibly, yes. It's also possible that medication won't help you at all. In fact, it could actually make you feel worse, but the only way to find out is by trying it. You also need to bear in mind that there are dozens of different types of anti-anxiety medication, and it could easily take months or even years to find out which of them, if any, is best for you. Now I know this is a lot to think about, but at the moment, that's all I want you to do. Just think about it, okay? There's no rush. You can take as much time as you want. And if there's anything you're not sure about, anything you want to ask me, just let me know, okay? Yeah. We can do this, Elliot. We can do everything possible to make you better. But we have to do it together. We have to do it between the three of us. You, your mom, and me. And Ella May silently added, "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome."